All right, welcome to another episode of Python for Bioengineers. Today we're going to be talking about for loops. And so this video relies a little bit on a background knowledge of lists, which we covered in the last video. So if you haven't seen that yet, I highly recommend that you go watch it before watching this one. So it can get really repetitive to perform a lot of tasks in Python. For example, if you wanted to print a range of numbers, here we have 0, 1, 2, and 3, you're going to have to write that out 4 times just to get that to print. And it works, but that's really unsustainable if you want to increase the scale of a lot of functions and tools that we use. So thankfully, there is a way to automate that, and that's called a for loop. So I'm just going to jump right into the syntax of a for loop and how to use it. But if I go too fast or anything, feel free to pause it and go back and make sure you understand what's going on here. So the first step in writing a for loop is the for. You can see that here. You write for, and then I've written I, but this can be any variable name. And what this variable is going to do is it's going to iterate through whatever you put here. So for I in range 4 means that this for loop is going to iterate the value I through each integer in the range from 0 to 4. From 0 to 3. And so I'm going to go over the range function in just a second. But for now, just know that it's going to assign the value 0, 1, 2, 3 to the variable I. And so we can see that here when we print that variable I, that it goes through and prints each one of them. And so now kind of jumping into the range function. The range function is super useful for loops and some other things, but starting with it, the most very basic use of the range function is just to put in one number. And what the range function does is it starts at 0 and it gives you integers going up to the value that you put in, with that value being exclusive. So say you put in, I'll just run this so we can look. And so say you put in 5, it's going to give you the integers 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And that's if you use this in the for loop. And then if you put in 2 inputs to the range function, you can give it a starting value, which is inclusive, and that upper limit, which is exclusive again. So if you put in 1 and 5, then you'll get 1, 2, 3, 4. You can even put in 3 inputs. So the first one is the starting value inclusive, second is the ending value exclusive, and the third value is going to be the increment that you use to jump from value to value. So if we go down to that, you can see that it starts at 1, jumps up 2, and then there's no other number 2 higher than 3 that is less than 5, so it stops. And then not only can you do this, but you can also go backwards. So say we want to start at 4 and go down to 0. You start at 4 because that's inclusive, and then exclusive is -1. So it goes 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and you have to make sure that your increment is negative. Otherwise, it won't print anything. So now this is where the lists come in. But not only can you assign a range of values for I to loop through, but you can have I loop through a list. So you could pass in your own data structure or your own data collection. Here we're going to just use lists, but as you learn more about Python and different data structures, you can use those in a for loop as well, or a for each loop. So here, if we look at this, we're going for I in int list. So it's going to iterate through all of the values in int list and then perform this operation. And so this is I squared. So if we run this cell, we can see passing in our own data collection, we get 0, 4, 25, 36, 361, which is each of these values squared. And you can do the same thing for a string where it will iterate through each character in that string. So if we print each of the letters I in DNA, we can see that it's printing out each of these letters. And you can also do this for a Boolean, a list of Booleans. It can be any kind of list. So they don't have to just be numbers. You can print out this Boolean list that we create here. So this has a lot of applications. You can do a lot of different operations and use a lot of different tools within a for loop. So here we have an integer list, and then we're going to be performing an append function on this example list. or on this integer list and see what we get when we run this. So what this does is this actually inverts the list. And so what we're doing is we're starting with the length of the list -1. So it's to make it inclusive, because the length of the list is going to be 4, but the first index is 3, since it's 0, 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to -1 because we want to include 0, and this value is exclusive. And then we're iterating in steps of -1 because we're going backwards. So this takes the third value, 90, and appends it to example. And then it goes -1, it takes the second value, which is 3, and then it appends it to example, and then so on until we have the list reversed. So this Jupyter Notebook is going to be posted in the Google Drive. And if there's any point in the video where you just need to check syntax for something, feel free to go back, pause it, and reference this Jupyter Notebook for notes. Thank you, and I hope this helps.